Greetings, this is Xavier Cortada with Miami Corona Project Conversations. Today I'm delighted to bring to our program here online Michael Spring, who is the director of the Department of Cultural Affairs at Miami-Dade County. He also serves as a senior advisor to our mayor, overseeing not just Department of Cultural Affairs, but also parks and libraries. I happen to chair the Cultural Affairs Council, an advisory committee to his department, and I have known Michael since 2005 when I first served as a member of this advisory group. Michael oversees a department of committed civil servants who bring culture to all aspects of our life. They have been doing that in a most impressive way. One of our national leaders and one of our most impressive national programs in bringing culture to our community. Michael, welcome to our Miami Corona Project. Thank you so much for being here during this very difficult and hectic time in our community.
It's an honor, Xavier. Thanks for.
Sure. So, Michael, this pandemic has basically closed down the county for every important reason: the social distancing and making sure that we as a community do not continue to spread the virus. How has that actually impacted theaters and museums and spaces and places where we, in our role as a cultural sector, convene people to come together and experience the gifts and assets of this community? How has that impacted us in Miami-Dade County?
Well, in all sorts of obvious ways, so I want to talk about those, but I want to spend a little time talking about the less obvious ways too. Almost at the height of the cultural season and an exciting cultural season, everything came to an abrupt stop. For public health reasons, all the obvious reasons, we had to close theaters, museums, art centers, outdoor events to help stem the tide of the coronavirus. So the obvious effect of this is that nonprofit arts organizations depend heavily on earned revenue, ticket sales, admissions, subscriptions, and contracted services, concessions, all of those things that go into making a budget for a nonprofit arts organization. And all of that earned revenue came to a stop. And so that alone would have a dramatic effect on jeopardizing the survival of a nonprofit cultural organization.
How many of those nonprofits do we have, more or less?
Conservatively
Hundreds,
speaking,
right?
we fund 500 of them, but there are more than that. So, we estimate, when you count everything, close to 1,000 nonprofits in one of the most vibrant and diverse cultural communities in the world at this point. But in addition to losing all of that earned revenue, obviously people are a little jittery about, contributing money to an arts organization that's closed. And even though there's been some heroic gestures by the philanthropic community here, that's been mitigated by the turmoil on the stock market, which has, affected people's overall confidence about their own wealth. And so you're finding that earned revenue is stopped, contributed income is questionable, and arts organizations are literally looking down the road at survival, whether they're going to survive at all. And that's the key issue that we're facing right now. Interestingly enough, Xavier, and this because of your own work, in spite of that, in spite of the anxiety and the worry, arts organizations have stepped up and are providing virtual experiences. Artists are providing virtual studio visits. Arts organizations are sharing performances online. Arts education organizations are sharing class activities for kids that are now, confined to their homes. And it was interesting, yesterday, the Children's Trust convened a session just like this, but for 400 providers, social service organizations, health organizations, education organizations. The one organization that they featured during this webinar as the example of how to conduct oneself in a situation like this was an arts organization, the Thomas Armour Youth Ballet, who has constituted a series of virtual classes for kids that's absolutely amazing. And so the heroic efforts by our cultural community to say, you know, life's got to go on, hope's got to go on, and the arts can bring joy, peace, and some reassurance the community is happening all at once.
Yeah,
And as you,
I'm really proud of our colleagues across the cultural community. At a time like this, when obviously so many organizations are worried about their futures, right? You just explained that situation. No earned revenue and very little, or some skepticism in the philanthropic community out of where their wealth is going to be. But artists as well, right? The actual people who deliver the creative class who delivers these services are obviously concerned about their livelihood and their futures, and them not getting infected, and friends and families that may be at risk. But they're still creating art. They're still giving these cultural gifts to the community and ensuring that at times like this, when there's so much anxiety, right, their art can be poetry among the ruins. And I'm just so happy to be sort of part of that community of artists who are trying to do everything they can and use their creativity at this very moment to address that. And you're right, groups like that ballet, in a place where you're in a claustrophobic space, you're stuck in your apartment and you can't get out, to be able to go online and be transported is so magical, right?
Yeah, the most touching thing I heard from the teacher that was presenting this session yesterday from Thomas Armour was that at the end of the classes, the kids don't want to leave.
Yeah.
And that's just amazing stuff. But your point about artists is a really good one. I mean, so many artists rely on social interaction. I mean, whether it's a musician performing or a dancer on a stage or a visual artist with an exhibition in a gallery or a museum, everybody's lost those gigs.
Yep.
The impact on artists has been just as dramatic and just as serious as the impact on nonprofit arts organizations. And we're equally worried about what's going to happen to this artist community that we have. That's amazing. I mean, we have one of the most amazing, communities of artists in the United States today.
What's the department doing to help both our cultural organizations, right? The cultural infrastructure that is delivering all these all the art to our community, and also the individual artists. I know that you've been sending out some bulletins letting the artistic and cultural community know where they can access resources and how we're going to be there for them. But if you could just elaborate a little bit on that, that'd be awesome.
Sure. So, just this week, we sent out a pretty comprehensive list of opportunities for artists that, and many of them are financial, most of them are financial. And what's really great to see is foundations have really stepped up and made real resources available to artists to help them pay the rent, buy food. This isn't money to make art, it's money to make lives go on. So that's great. And we're spending some time on staff combing through these resources to see which ones are real, so we don't just send out a bunch of stuff that isn't relevant to our artists. So that's going on.
Thank you so much for doing that. And for the cultural organizations?
For the cultural organizations, this is a couple of key things that we're doing. On the same side, we're doing the same thing, opportunities. I mean, when the CARES Act was passed by Congress included $75 million in for the National Endowment for the Arts. So those guidelines were just published this week, and we're encouraging groups that can to apply. But, Xavier, one thing that we're really good at as an arts community is storytelling. I mean, you and I are doing that today, right? And that's critically important because that's how people find out about things. But we also have a responsibility at the department to lend real definition to what's going on. So we issued a survey this week to the cultural community to begin to paint a picture of what the real financial impact is on a monthly basis, because this is going to continue until it stops. And so we're going to collect financial data from the arts community on a monthly basis about revenue loss and increased expenses, jobs lost, canceled performances and activities, and all the rest. So we're hoping to be able to publish the results of those surveys on a monthly basis to begin to lend credibility and substantiation to what you and I know is happening out there. You know, organizational survival and artist survival is at stake. And so we're doing that with the idea that the very board that you chair will be the advocate for the resources that's needed to address these things.
Yeah, as you know, we're having our meeting, obviously, via video on Wednesday, and I so look forward to your presentation. I know that all of our council members are committed to helping you and the incredible staff that you have to take us, through this crisis at the Miami-Dade County cultural community level. Once we come out on the other side, once social distancing isn't necessary, perhaps there's a vaccine, maybe sooner than that. How will this incredible engine that we have built, this cultural engine that has an impressive economic impact of $1.43 billion in Miami-Dade County. As you know, the recent national study conducted by American for the Arts says that the work we do in Miami-Dade County and the cultural community has that kind of economic impact. How will we remain a vibrant art community after this? How will we ensure that there's going to be economic development here in this urban city? And should we be looking forward to the arts to help restart the economy? Is that a role you think your department, that the cultural sector can have, restarting our economy, which is so based on tourism, so based on the arts? Clearly, we are one of the epicenters of arts in the hemisphere. Can we look to our cultural community do that, or will that sector, like maybe the cruise industry, be impacted when this is done? And I know you don't have a magic ball, but what are you visualizing? How do we get back to where we were? How can we get back? Can we?
Yeah, you and I share this sort of passionate belief that the arts are what's shaping the character, the image, and the quality of this place that we live in. And I don't think that's going to change.
Yeah.
I think that once we get past the anxiety and the threat of the COVID-19, that the arts will play a key role in convening people again around social activities. And I think that no matter what happens, I mean, we've all been introduced to this virtual life by necessity. People will still value the interaction.
Yeah.
And there is nothing like being in a gallery in a museum and being confronted by a great work of art, or being in a theater and having music and dance assault you in the best possible way.
Absolutely.
And so I think people will still value those things. One of the things that we're wrestling with right now, to be candid, is how do we rebuild confidence in people to go back out, when there isn't going to be an end date, right?
Right.
I mean, it isn't going to be like, this is the day and everything is going to be fine after it. It's going to, I envision it'll be a gradual reentry into the life that we used to have in some form. And we have to develop strategies to rebuild confidence in people in getting back together. And one of the things we've been thinking about is, before the order to close everything occurred, we were beginning to develop those strategies, right? Theaters were introducing Purell everywhere you looked, and social distancing to some degree was beginning to take place. And so there may be an interim period where we have to go through all of that.
I think so. And in many ways, I do think the cultural community can lead, just as it can lead us emotionally. It can lead us through this emotional chaos by lifting voices, by helping people find hope through the arts, something that has happened since time immemorial. I also know that the cultural sector is going to lead us back into economic stability. In other words, I think that is where people first put their toe in the water, where they will engage and experience one another. Again, all driven by science, all driven by health, all driven by epidemiology. But just like the same way that I think art can open hearts and get people to feel good, I think it can also open up our economic sector in our city again. And I so look forward to your leadership, Michael. You've been leading our county for decades in this area, and we need you now more than ever. Thank you for everything you do.
Thanks, Xavier. You're a great partner and an amazing leader of our board. And I know that together we'll get through all of this.
All right. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
You too.
All right. Bye, Michael. Here,
Bye-bye.
do one of these, right? Like, we can't even do this because it's 6 feet away. It's virtual away. Hang in there. All right. See you on our meeting on Wednesday. Bye.
Okay. Take care.